Is it possible that every Nazarene believer across the 30,000 local churches around the world will learn to live out this life of Christ, this life like Christ, towards fellow believers, towards family, towards friends, towards community? Well, this is a grand vision, a very worthwhile vision indeed. For Jesus emptied himself, and in obedience to the Father, he died for the sins of all mankind and provided for our forgiveness. How? By his resurrection. And so by nature we can see that God is a self-giving God. And having been made in God's image, we are meant to be in loving, self-giving relationships with one another. So as leaders and members of the Church of the Nazarene, we are to be encouragers. We're to be this encouraging part of our fellow believers' spiritual journeys as each and together we grow in Christ and as we minister as Christ ministered. And I like the way Paul sums it up in Colossians 1:28. He says, our ultimate goal is to present each other fully mature in Christ. And spiritual maturity and giving of ourselves are vitally interwoven. The spiritual person is one who backs up their testimony with deeds. If our religion has touched our time and our resources, it's safe to assume that it has penetrated other important areas of our lives. You see, giving of ourselves helps us to grow in grace. It teaches dependence upon God. It releases spiritual resources. It's a stimulant to faith. It instructs our spiritual values. And it strengthens obedience in other areas. It lifts up our faith to claim God's promises. It implants a desire to do more for God. You see, spiritual maturity and giving of ourselves, these are interwoven. And as believers, we are encouraged to live it, we're encouraged to teach it, we're encouraged to preach it. And as believers, we're called to minister with compassion to those who God places in our path. Ministering with time, with talent, with treasure, these things that have been already entrusted to our care. So as an organized entity of the Church of the Nazarene, NCM is here to help raise up this grand vision, to help raise up believers all across the world who minister more and more as Christ ministered. So you can see the core purpose of NCM contributes exactly to the overarching mission of the denomination to make disciples who look more like Christ. Our core purpose embraces most of our role. And is NCM involved in other related pursuits? Well, absolutely. If we examine the range of activities and actions that NCM involves itself over the course of a typical year, we find that we encourage and manage things like child sponsorship and child development centers. Why? Because we believe that his followers should raise up children in the way that they should go. And we find that we encourage our local churches across the globe to organize themselves around disaster preparedness, disaster response, because we believe God calls his followers to be prepared to give a cup of water to someone in need. NCM is a lot of things. And with the greatest part of its role being to support the raising up of disciples who look more and more like our compassionate Lord. What a grand vision it is.